deals with a major player in PACE that a lot of people have questions about. And with a lot of things in life, it really does vary depending upon who you talk to. But we're going to be talking about the capital provider side. We're going to be talking about in Missouri, where we get mortgage lender consent, as well as how community banks, credit unions, and other small banks can start to engage in PACE, not just on the lender consent side, but also on the lending side, using this as a tool. There are a variety of states and that have had significant success with community banks as PACE lenders, not just the specialty lenders, and that can provide a variety of different benefits for everybody involved. So I'm really excited to have both Ruben and Kim with us today to share with you the perspectives of these capital providers, what they think of when they're looking at PACE as either a consent or as playing as part of a tool that they're providing their customers. So without ado, I provide you Ruben Alonso with AltCap.
Thanks, Josh. Hello, everyone. Ruben Alonso, CEO of AltCap. We're a community development financial institution, or CDFI. And just out of curiosity, how many folks are familiar with what a CDFI is or have worked with a CDFI? Okay, not everybody. So CDFIs, or community development financial institutions, are very specialized financial institutions. We get our certification as a CDFI from the Department of Treasury, the CDFI Fund, which is a division of the Treasury. And they have certified about 1,400 CDFIs in the country, all very purpose, impact driven in terms of how they deploy capital. But CDFIs come in various shapes, sizes, and colors. We happen to be a CDFI based in Kansas City, Missouri, but serving multiple states, including Missouri, Kansas, Texas, California, Colorado, and Nebraska. And our primary focus is deploying capital to communities, to entrepreneurs that are kind of fall out of the financial mainstream or kind of underserved by traditional financial institutions or overlooked by traditional financial institutions. But you'll find that most CDFIs, if not all CDFIs, have a similar type of kind of purpose and mission in terms of where they deploy their capital, what they're trying to do with their capital, and that's part of the certification. CDFIs are really designed to bring capital to communities or census tracts that are, again, kind of underserved, overlooked by traditional financial institutions. But that said, CDFIs, most CDFIs are set up as nonprofit organizations. So we are a 501c4 entity. There are some CDFIs that are actually banks or chartered financial institutions. There are kind of some mezzanine lenders that are CDFIs as well. So they really do kind of come in all different, like I said, shapes, sizes, and colors. As far as, in terms what they or how they provide capital, AltCap specifically, our capital comes in many forms. We offer microloans, small business loans, some revenue-based financing, but our main kind of financing tool historically has been the New Markets Tax Credit Program. That's where we've intersected with PACE financing, mostly on development projects, commercial development projects, some multifamily mixed-use projects as well. So we are acting as a lender in a lot of those transactions. So we did have to familiarize ourselves with PACE financing. Josh, helped with that, but we definitely see PACE financing is very aligned or consistent with a lot of things that we're trying to accomplish with our financing, specifically New Markets Tax Credits. We have community benefits agreements with all of our New Markets Tax Credit transactions. So there are specific goals that we're trying to achieve when we enter into a New Markets Tax Credit financing transaction. So that could be, job creation. If we're financing an operating business, could be blight removal. If we're talking about some sort of catalytic real estate development project. But part of most of our financing with real estate specifically has included some goals around energy efficiency, kind of green development. We've done multiple LEED certified projects, and that's where I think that the PACE financing has really been very aligned with our specific financing goals and objectives with the New Markets Tax Credit Program. So I think with that motivation, we've definitely been more open to looking at PACE financing, and including that as part of our capital stack, as part of the kind of the overall financial structure of these transactions. So you can go to the next slide. I may have just talked about most of this. Like I said, CD5 certified by the Department of Treasury. That's a little bit about just alt cap, our mission. I will say one other thing about just how CDFIs definitely are much more flexible lenders. While there are CDFIs that are banks, like Legacy Bank is one here in Missouri. Central Bank of Kansas City is another kind of CDFI banks or CDFI bank. Most CDFIs, like I said, are set up as nonprofits like us. We have a lot more flexibility, latitude in how we can structure our financing transactions, which gives us a lot of ability to be really creative around our financing, maybe more so, a lot more than a traditional financial institutions. We're essentially an unregulated lender, so we've got a lot of ability to really be creative around our lending and set up very flexible terms and conditions around our financing. So I think that's also helped us in terms of how we've been able to bring in other kind of financing tools like PACE into our transactions, aside from just, again, that motivation to really get deals done, really help projects that are going to have a major impact in the communities that we're serving get off the ground. So next slide. Let's see, a little bit about AltCap. We've been around for 10 years. So really doing everything from micro lending to New Markets Tax Credit. So that's really allowed us to finance everything from a $1,000 micro loan to a $45 million New Markets Tax Credit transaction and everything in between. So if you haven't run across a CDFI in your community, I definitely look to reach out. If you're here in Missouri, you can talk to AltCap, SLDC, who we just heard from, St. Louis Development Corporation. They're also not a CDFI, but a very similar entity that is very active with the New Markets Tax Credit Program as well. I'm trying to think of some other CDFIs in Missouri. There's some kind of nonprofit CDFIs that really are focused on community development projects, like IFF. They're based in St. Louis. Let's see who else. Justine Peterson. They're another kind of more kind of business real estate lender based out of St. Louis as well. So next slide. Let's see what we got here. Just a little bit about our impact. With New Markets Tax Credits, we've had a pretty robust portfolio around projects using the New Markets Tax Credit Program, mostly real estate, but we've done some operating businesses as well. New Markets Tax Credits is a very kind of flexible financing product. Really allows us to pair New Markets Tax Credit financing with other financing, whether it's historic tax credits, PACE financing, any type of kind of local incentive programs. New Markets Tax Credits really is a flexible tool that we've been able to pair with a lot of these other kind of financing programs, as well as just other private financing. But then on the small business lending side, doing a lot more in that area as well. It's actually the area that we were really looking to grow our activity here in Missouri with our microloans and small business loans. Next slide. So a little bit about, I guess, one transaction that was brought up with Andy from the city of Kansas City. This is just one example I just wanted to use about how we were able to get all the different kind of lenders comfortable with the PACE financing, in addition to just getting comfortable with the New Markets Tax Credit financing. If you haven't been exposed to a New Markets Tax Credit financing transaction or deal diagram, consider yourself lucky, because they are very complicated, convoluted structures. And that definitely did present some issues with PACE financing and how to integrate a PACE loan into the overall financing structure. But without getting too much into the weeds or details about the New Markets Tax Credit financing, we really had to kind of separate the two financing transactions, the New Markets Tax Credits and the PACE lender or the PACE loan. Even though there was some connection between the two, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. But as far as the new markets tax credit capital goes, this was all kind of structured on its own, involved a number of different lenders. AltCap essentially is kind of the senior lender in the entire transaction, even with the involvement of a private lender, a bank. AltCap is a CDFI lender. It really ends up becoming the senior lender. The bank financing that's involved in the new markets tax credit structure really has to forbear for 7 years, or essentially the compliance term of the new markets tax credit transaction. So that in itself creates a lot of hesitation or challenges with enticing or attracting that private capital, that bank to participate in that deal. Then when you add in a PACE loan, which has its own kind of challenges, especially around who's senior on the debt and things like that. I think that can scare away a lot of banks. I know, as far as like the whole priority of whose debt is where, who's senior. That definitely has been, I think, a challenge with some banks around PACE financing. But in this case, being able to kind of separate the two, I think we were able to alleviate some of those concerns with the lenders that were involved in the new markets tax credit transaction up top. But ultimately, we were able to kind of put together this transaction. Twain Financial Services, they were the PACE lender. It also helped that they were very active in new markets tax credit financing, LIHTC financing. So they were kind of familiar with some of these structures. So really got comfortable with making a direct loan to the developer with their PACE loan, while the new markets tax credits came in through a separate transaction. But what really helped with Twain being involved is because of the nature of the new markets tax credit structure, to get the full benefit from the new markets tax credits, you have to have all of your source financing kind of all aggregated at once, so you can kind of really get the full benefit of the tax credit. So because PACE financing is dispersed kind of as you generate eligible PACE costs, and those are essentially kind of reimbursed through the PACE funds. That really left that developer with not being able to kind of size his deal to really also include those PACE eligible costs. So what Twain was able to do is facilitate this type of a structure, is be the lender, but also help with us bringing in a kind of a bridge lender to essentially provide the what was the PACE loan up front to run through our new markets tax credit structure, and again really kind of size the new markets tax credit deal to take full advantage of the tax credits and get a larger size deal, which throws off more tax credit equity to the project. But that really, I think, was because we had one a PACE lender that helped to facilitate that, and a bridge lender that was willing to do that. So yeah, overall, I think the transaction was successful, and in that we were able to really kind of pull capital from a number of different sources. I mean, this project specifically Truce Village on the Truce corridor, was definitely a difficult project. It involved historic tax credits, new markets tax credits, PACE financing, private financing, some city tax abatement. But overall, I think the fact that it was a historic project, was being retrofitted to really take advantage of some of the energy efficiency with these high efficiency coolers and boilers that they used, replacing all the windows. I mean, I think everybody was really motivated to get this project done, and what those energy efficiencies would translate into better or lower rents for this project in a under invested area that really was struggling in terms of attracting tenants into that building. So it's still actually not complete. It's had some challenges with the historic tax credit program here in Missouri, but we anticipate it being completed next year. I don't think there was another slide here, so yeah, happy to answer any questions about our involvement, or we can wait till after the next presentation. Yeah.
So for those that aren't experts, could you dive into new market tax credits just a little bit, like a 30,000-foot overview of what those are and how that works and how that applies to a property?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's a new markets tax credits. It is a federal tax credit program. So this is a program that was, I think, created in 2001. So a fairly mature program. There actually used to be a state new markets tax credit program here in Missouri too, but that was discontinued maybe like 10 years ago. But as far as how it works is, so the CDFI fund of the Department of Treasury allocates a certain amount of new markets tax credits each year. CDFIs or other entities called CDEs or community development entities are competing for these tax credits every year. So we submit applications to get these tax credits from the Department of Treasury. Once we're awarded these tax credits, the Treasury is essentially saying, hey, AltCap, here's some federal tax credits, find some investors to purchase these tax credits and use the proceeds to finance a project like the Truce Village, or finance an operating business in your community that's going to be creating jobs. Keep in mind that new markets tax credit transactions are typically larger, kind of significant, represent significant investments in your community. So we're talking about $5 million and above. This isn't like a small loan program. So once we, like I said, get these tax credits from the Treasury, we sell them to an investor. Here in Missouri, it's typically U.S. Bank. They're a huge investor in these tax credits, probably buy 70% of the tax credits nationally. So we take the proceeds of those tax credits, that tax credit investment from U.S. Bank, and we essentially provide those funds to a developer or a business in the form of a 7-year interest-only loan. So that's how we essentially provide the first benefit to a borrower with the new markets tax credit program. We're selling these tax credits, generating proceeds that we use then to make a really low-cost loan to a developer or a business for 7 years. They're only paying interest on that for 7 years. And that really kind of helps to subsidize the overall financing of the transaction, because ultimately new markets tax credits can't pay for a project on its own. It has to work with other sources of capital. I'd say new markets tax credits probably represents about 25% of the capital stack. The rest is coming from, a bank loan or PACE financing or, TIF dollars or, historic tax credits, something else. So that's, I guess, how the money kind of, or capital flows into a deal with new markets tax credits. The second benefit is after the 7-year compliance period or the term of the new markets tax credit loan, that loan essentially gets forgiven. So there's an unwind or kind of exiting process of the transaction, but ultimately the end user, the borrower, gets that portion of the loan, the 25% of the overall kind of financing transaction, forgiven. We essentially, as a CDFI, part of our purpose or mission is really to bring kind of low cost capital, really incent or support high impact projects so as a CDFI, we're looking to find projects that are going to have a high impact in our community. One of the incentives is, we're going to give that developer or that business a low cost loan and potential loan forgiveness at the end of the term. So the first benefit is, again, interest only, low cost capital for 7 years. The second is you can have a nice kind of equity contribution into your project at the end of 7 years because that loan is forgiven. Does that help answer or help understand how the capital comes through?
One quick follow-up, just curious about the people that can use these kinds of things. How do they qualify through you? And how do you choose who the winners and losers are of the use of that funds?
Good question. So it's a very geographically targeted program. That's the first kind of criteria. You have to be in an eligible census tract to qualify for new markets tax credit facilitated financing. Very kind of akin to most recently, the opportunity zones. So every every opportunity zone is a new markets tax credit eligible census tract. It doesn't work the other way around. Like not every new markets tax credit census tract or eligible census tract is an opportunity zone, but same kind of criteria and how those were determined. You know, these are census tracts which are highest levels of poverty, highest levels of unemployment, things like that. And, you know, these are communities or census tracts where the federal government is really trying to steer kind of public and private capital into to support investment. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I mean, new markets tax credits, the borrower can be, you know, a for-profit business. It could be a real estate developer. It actually could be a nonprofit as well. We've financed a lot of nonprofit entities, again, mostly real estate related, like a new YMCA or a new Boys and Girls Club. But I'd say 80% of all new markets tax credit transactions have been real estate financing related in some way.
Yeah, Steve Method, Midas Developments. I have in my past lived through projects with multiple tranches of new market tax credits and the crazy 3-page organizational charts, et cetera. But I don't want to relive that right now. My question is, when you bifurcated the PACE funding from the new market side or conventional on that project, were you required, or did you require separation of contracts and scopes and tracking of billing for the PACE portion of the project from the greater project?
No, and that says they were very much intertwined, even though we kind of had to segregate the actual loans. Because of the way the new markets tax credit transaction is structured and alt cap, we have to be that senior lender, and you know all the other lenders kind of have to forbear on their portion of the financing. Yeah, but everything else, as far as like the disbursements, you know, all the kind of PACE eligible costs were kind of run through the same disbursement. We had that bridge lender because we had the borrower wanted to kind of access those funds before kind of the eligible cost could be reimbursed from the PACE lender.
Gotcha.
And I don't know if that's changed. Maybe it was that way in the past, but I think Kathy, you had a slide up that said like all the cash comes up front, but that's not how it was in our transaction, or at least the developer wasn't going to be able to see that the cash from the PACE loan up front.
Are you saying it's funded in, or it's deposited into an escrow account?
Yeah, but and it was
to draw from.
Right, but he had to wait to receive kind of the eligible cost, receive the funds from that PACE loan when those eligible costs were incurred. Whereas what the bridge lender was able to do was provide the funding all up front so that we can run it through the new markets, essentially kind of run it through the new markets tax credit structure to kind of size the deal accordingly to get the maximum benefit from the new markets tax credit transaction. Because the larger the transaction size for the new markets tax credits, the more benefit you're getting from actual tax credits.
And Ruben, that's accurate. So for all the projects, by state law, you have to verify that the funds are going to the components that they're set up for. Yeah. So the lenders are required to put the funds into escrow, and then the contract, depending upon the size, right? If it's a $150,000 project, that's the roof, doing the roof, giving the $150,000. Right. But you got some of these $5 million projects, when your contractor says, I need this, then they go to the escrow account, and then that's when they pull it down. So I see what you're saying is you're just adding that step in there to allow the new market tax credit to be larger and get a greater benefit on that side of the ledger. And it doesn't mean anything that's bad about PACE. You're just adding that to make that more effective. Does that sound about right? Yeah,
if you go back to my slide, I mean, that transaction would have been, or at least for the new markets tax credit purposes, that overall transaction size would have been $3.3 million less. Mm-hmm. Meaning the developer wouldn't have been able to receive the additional benefit from, you know, that $3.3 million going through the new markets tax credit structure from the tax credit equity that's generated from from sizing it.
Yeah, that makes
the way
sense.
We did. Yeah.
Okay. See, that help answer your question. Great. Any other questions?
Yeah, everything else around, the transaction and how we're tracking costs, whether it's PACE eligible costs or not. I mean, it was all coordinated between all the different parties, including the PACE lender.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions either online or here for Ruben before we head over to Kimberly? All right. Well, there may be some questions at the end room, but with that, we will hear from Kimberly and Slipstream all the way from Wisconsin. She's got her cheese and curds ready, right?
I do, Josh. Thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Kim Johnston. I'm the Market Development Director for the CPACE program in the state. It's called PACE Wisconsin. We also implement the City of Milwaukee's program too. And I want to talk today a little bit about how we include both local, regional, and national lenders in the program. Go ahead, go to the next slide. So PACE Wisconsin is currently available in 51 counties throughout the state. And Slipstream, as I mentioned, also runs the City of Milwaukee CPACE program. As of today, we've closed 92 projects so far under PACE Wisconsin over the last 5 to 6 years, which means that's about $165 million in CPACE financing that's run through the state so far. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Our program allows for commercial property types that include both healthcare, industrial, multifamily buildings of 5 or more units, retail, agriculture, hospitality, which we've seen an abundance of, both hotels, sports centers, ice rinks. It includes not-for-profits like churches or Big Brothers Big Sister clubs, office buildings, and mixed-use properties. Project types include both renovations, new construction, adaptive reuse, equipment that it saves both water and energy. And the only types of properties that can't use PACE in the state are residential property owners or municipal buildings. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Our program includes financing for energy efficiency and water efficiency projects. Most commonly, projects that have been included or financed include lighting systems, building controls, building envelope improvements, basically roof, window, walls, furnaces, boilers, chillers, heat pumps, variable speed drives, low flow fixtures, heat recovery systems, and within the last year, we've also added EV charging infrastructure and resiliency measures too. Now in the state, at least in our state, energy efficiency projects are the most commonly financed by local lenders. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Our solar program also includes renewable energy projects like solar PV, battery storage, biofuel, biodigesters, and wind projects. Our local banks have been able to do renewable energy on ag projects. We've had 5 closed in the last 2 years. The agricultural market and the hospitality market are the largest as far as some of the projects they'd like to close in the past. These loans have ranged from $191,000 for smaller solar arrays to up to about $3.5 million for a dairy solar array. Similar for hospitality, those chains have run from the smaller side from $500,000 loans up to $2.5 million on larger hotel chains. You can go to the next slide. So you may wonder why local lenders should participate. And I'm sitting here because I'm filling in for a couple of our lenders. They basically wanted me to tell you why not. One of our largest lenders explained that it gives him a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And in his words, would you rather have the larger lender, a national bank, doing it instead? Some of the other reasons they gave that it gives a competitive marketplace advantage. It's basically another tool that they use in their own toolbox to serve their client base. It allows them to keep their clients in-house with the CPACE product. It also replaces the more expensive mezz debt. Right now we have some of our PACE loans closing out at 7.5 to 8%, and mezz debt is getting increasingly more expensive for some of our new construction, at least in Wisconsin. So CPACE has been a nice alternative to that. They also know their market and new projects that are coming down the pipe, so they have better access to new construction projects, and they're already a trusted partner in the community. Go ahead, go to the next section. So Wisconsin's closed 92 loans, and over a fourth of those have been closed by local lenders. Local lenders were some of the first participants in the CPACE program in Wisconsin. And again, once I mentioned before that they're really familiar with the new construction opportunities where businesses are making large green investments on their current properties. One specific lender, one community bank, has closed 25 loans with the PACE Wisconsin program, and some additional loans in the City of Milwaukee program too, which Slipstream also manages. Local banks like One Community Bank have made a difference both in their community and helping do projects with retrofits, and those pieces have been financed via PACE. You can go to the next slide. And this is a list of our current participating CPACE lenders. There are 29 different lenders currently participating in the program. 10 of them are local lenders. The rest of them are a mix of both regional and national lenders too. And in Wisconsin, we run an open market system. So we do feel that the property owners get a better deal when these folks are competing for their business. And lastly, I just have a few examples that one of the lenders passed along to me that they'd asked that I share with you all. These are some common case studies. So I think a lot of people think that perhaps the regional lenders or the larger national lenders are the only ones that can serve certain market sectors. And I don't think that's the case, because some of our smaller community banks have done business across different market sectors. This is a case study of one of the local lenders. One community bank did a Brookfield Square Lodging. It's a $1.6 million new construction project in Brookfield, which is a suburb of Milwaukee. Loan term is 20 years. The average savings per year is about $119,000. Water savings is about 1.65 million gallons they're saving a year. So improvements included building shell, roof wall windows, LED lightings, low flow fixtures, HVAC systems, hot water heaters, and solar power too. So the impact is not only environmental, it also is saving on their bottom line. Go to the next slide. Same bank, different project. This is the Edge. It's a $1.4 million refinance, which they're allowed to do in the state of Wisconsin on a new construction mixed use project. Today it has over 100% occupancy and a waiting list for that property. The savings is approximately $55,000 over a 20-year lifespan. The improvements include the garage DCB, LED lighting, roof wall windows, and they use the PACE loan to lower the cost of the capital and the debt stack. They also are able to roll in some soft costs in the state of Wisconsin. And so the energy audit was also put into that, along with some development work. Go to the next section. The Avant, which is a new construction 33 unit multifamily product. It's a smaller loan, about $599,000 for a 20-year fixed rate. Average savings per year is roughly $35,000 a year. Now they have a huge water saving component to this project also, which is 1.3 million gallons a year with the low flow fixtures they incorporated. With PACE, they're able to roll into some of the soft costs on this project too, and also lower their debt stack at the same time. So I know that you probably talked about it all morning. It is a non-recourse financing for the borrower, and it is transferable upon the sale of the property if at any point this does change hands. And then the final case study. This is a rather large senior housing mixed care facility outside of the Wisconsin Dells. It's almost $600,000 loan, and it covers the building shell, LED lighting, low flow fixtures, energy efficient HVAC system, and a water heater. And their savings is approximately $35,000 a year in energy savings and 1.3 million gallons of water a year on water savings. We don't calculate the cost of the water savings, but as you can imagine, the figures that we've shared in previous slides, it adds up with operating capital too. And there's the next slide. As I mentioned before, our lenders have some of the closest relationships in the commercial market. And again, out of 95 approximate projects that have closed out of the statewide program, and also the City of Milwaukee's program, they play an important role in the lending structure of the community. That's not to discount the role of our regional and our national lenders, but they do have cap requirements for some of the local lenders, and theoretically they need to work with the lower ranges within the market. So some of our local lenders are able to go down to $125,000 in lending requirements. Now they can also go up to 10 million, where our regional and national lenders have a much higher cap. So I think that they played an important role in helping us to build out the program. And I think that's everything for me today. Again, I'm Kim Johnston with Pace, Wisconsin. We have been around for approximately 6 years. We hope to see continued growth and think that, especially given all the new construction that's still coming through the corridor, that PACE is a unique tool that can help close the gap, especially knocking out the more expensive mezz debt.
That's great. Kimberly, thank you so much.
You bet.
As you all can see, Slipstream and Kimberly run a first-rate program. They've developed really good relationships with their local banks. Are there any questions here before I ask some? All right. So my first question is to Ruben. Ruben, I was wondering if you could dive in a little bit deeper. And I think Kim would echo this, is, as would Kathy, the senior lender consent is often an issue that is in the background, but definitely is a hard wall that a lot of people have to figure out a way through, around, over, under, something like that. I wonder if you could give us a little bit more insight into what made you comfortable in the amount that is due or in arrears, taking a senior position over your investment.
Yeah, I think it's just that it's just the amount that's due or in arrears that does take that senior position. But also I think we're just, a motivated lender, and there's a lot of alignment between what we're trying to do with new markets tax credits, for example, and PACE financing. So it wasn't really a question of, why we would use PACE finance. It's more of how, and then we figured out a structure to accommodate that. I do think that a lot of lenders, that we've come across, to have that challenge with understanding PACE and kind of, again, how, what portion of the PACE loan is senior to their loan. But in our case, in most of our new markets tax credit transactions, we're already working with lenders that have already gotten comfortable with what is a very kind of non-traditional structure for financing anyways with new markets tax credits. And again, going back to the whole, the private lender has to forbear for 7 years, and they're already kind of not in a senior position with their financing. So I think that gives them, they're already coming in kind of being accustomed to that type of a structure. So it wasn't as hard for them to kind of get comfortable with the PACE financing and how that kind of interacts with the new markets tax credits. I would also say that, most of the projects that we're working on are have some sort of CRA or Community Reinvestment Act benefit for the lender. So they're, I think, additionally motivated, with a lot of projects that we're kind of bringing to them, for new markets tax credits, but also, potentially having PACE financing as well. And I think it, to Kimberly's point, I think they ultimately see the benefit of having, PACE financing coming in versus some other more expensive, financing. I think a lot of banks also, maybe treat it a little bit less like pure debt, and maybe more of an equity contribution by the owner, or it's it's more of a kind of an operating expense versus another form of debt service that is in addition to what they would be requiring the developer to provide with their financing.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. So I wanted to follow up that question with, for your projects that you had the community lenders lend on, were any of them where the community lender was also the senior lender and the PACE lender, or did they just pick the PACE side?
We've seen a mix of both. One entity does like to layer both the CPACE and their own mortgage on top of that. Those are usually the larger deals that they may have a cap with. So they will use a sliver of PACE. They'll use themselves as the mortgage lender. And then there may be 3 other mortgage lenders in the mix. So there was a large new construction in Milwaukee, and the total debt stack, I think, was 160 million. But again, the PACE piece and their part of the mortgage was just a sliver of the debt.
Okay, that makes sense. I know these are all putting you on the spot here, but I was wondering, in any of the community lenders that you have any of them allowed a PACE assessment on one of their properties without them being a senior, being the PACE and the senior?
Yes, Madison's a very competitive market. I like to pick on them because we have many of our PACE lenders in there, but they have to sign off on each other's PACE loans. And that just means that they need to, as they say, beat the bush a little bit better. Because again, they'd like to serve their clients. They hate when they lose out on a CPACE, especially a CPACE deal, especially if they are already offering PACE too. But again, it is pretty competitive out there, and the people who win are the commercial property owners in the end.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I have another question for you, and that is when we look at how a regular bank, community bank, looks at PACE, when I've spoken with them, I've heard that it's either as an investment or as a loan. Have you seen with your folks, are they seeing it as a loan, or are they using PACE as an investment tool on that side of the bank? You know?
They're seeing it as a loan.
Okay.
And actually, I know this isn't one of the questions you asked, but for the one banker that is doing a good portion of the ag lending for CPACE, that is just another way for them to roll into the REAP funds. So they're trying to basically use PACE to better serve their customer base.
Oh, so in those rural programs, they're using REAP, they're using PACE to front the REAP, and then the REAP comes in and helps pay off PACE, or is it just a combination?
It's a combo.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. REAP dollars are fantastic. A lot of Missourians use them. It's definitely a program I think that can combine and collaborate with PACE, whether it's efficiency or the solar there on those fields. We don't have the dairy farms you do have up there, so the buildings are a little bit different, but it's definitely a possibility. That's great.
And we are seeing agribusiness utilize PACE in Wisconsin. We do run a program in Nevada, and they're looking at indoor grow facilities and using solar and water measures on those properties where it is legalized.
Fantastic. Are there any, based off of that, any other questions? All right. Well, Kimberly, thank you for joining us from Wisconsin. I hope the weather is good up there like it is down here, at least for a little while. Ruben, thank you so much for coming in and joining us. Thank you both. Definitely, want to reiterate that the role that senior lenders and community lenders have in PACE is vital. One is definitely not going away because of the lender consent component, but the other is only growing, and they really do share that side. So I look forward to working with all the partners on that side. And if there are any questions about how to get involved with PACE as a community lender, a bank, a CDFI, please don't hesitate to contact our office. So thank you both very much.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, so that moves us to the next session. And I don't have the agenda here. Patrice, who do we have coming up? I apologize. That's it. Kathy and Byron. Byron's going to be joining us virtually. And Kathy's going to be talking with us about a very unique Sears program that Pace has. So we're going to take a 2-minute break here while we get things scheduled up, and then we'll get going again. Thank you. Byron, can you test your microphone for us, please?
Check 1, 2. Does it work?
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and